That's
What
beyond
the
the pale,
hell?
Jacob.
All right, starting this out right. No, I think Larry Fitzgerald is technically a free agent right now, but could return to the Cardinals. I don't even know. I remember looking at Spot Track and like seeing that he was technically a free agent on there, but I don't know what the deal is with his contract.
Yeah, he hasn't retired yet. But I mean, I can't imagine that they would have signed AJ Green if he wasn't planning to retire.
Right, like you only need one washed old ass receiver on your team. You don't need multiple ones.
Yeah, like there's all the different receiver positions, right? You got the guy playing X, you got the guy playing Y, you got the split end, and there's only one room for the balding old dude, and that's got to be Shane.
Exactly.
Oh.
Exactly.
Well, Houston's doing it with running backs, right? Just signing every aging running back they can find.
But I don't think we should take clues from what the Houston Texans are doing.
No.
Their running back room is fucking fun. Phil Lindsay, David Johnson, Mark Ingram, Rex Burkhead.
Is Lamar Miller still there? I mean, like, honestly, he might be at this point.
Nah.
Let's just see him roll out
Lamar
5
Miller
running
is with
backs.
the football team, isn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think they should just roll out like 5 running backs in a game and just play keep away type thing, like just lateral after lateral, like the Mighty Ducks, like when they had the flying V. Oh man,
they're all too slow though. They're all too slow.
I'm familiar with the Mighty Ducks,
and they're tired.
Well, that's why they need multiple ones of them to be able to tote the rock and pass it back once they get too tired.
One down.
So
back.
all that said, I'm buying the shit out of Phil Lindsay.
Same. I'm on Lindsay in best ball.
Yep. Well, I don't play best ball, but
yeah, you do.
I do.
He tries to act like he doesn't.
Because I love underdog.
Should we do that on a future? Should we do that on a future episode? I want to. Should we steal the idea that like everyone does, where they do like a underdog draft, and then I don't have to put any thought into actually making a show sheet, and then we like put funny constraints on each other, and we have to actually draft a team. I'm definitely planning on that.
You can't draft anybody with the letter T in their first name.
Right.
Because it's zany.
Yeah.
Oh my God! I just figured out what they're doing with Larry Fitzgerald.
What?
They're switching him to tight end.
That's why they let go of Dan Arnold.
I'm not even kidding you. There are legitimate suggestions that they're switching him to tight end because they don't use the tight ends.
Okay, legitimate suggestions from SAS Shampoo on Reddit doesn't mean that's actually the plan.
Exactly.
Oh my God, this is hilarious. Like, I'm not even kidding you because they don't use their tight ends to block ever. I'm literally reading it, and they're saying that Larry Fitzgerald could end up switching over to tight end. What the?
All that is that's like, look, we love you. We don't want to have to play you. We don't want to make you play for another team. So yes, you can still play for us, but now you play tight end.
Are you sure he's not going to be the tight end's coach?
There you go. That makes more sense, actually. Like, I would be shocked if he's not like an assistant wide receiver coach, and he's still on the team, but not really,
But he's like old enough to be the coach's father. Like that's who he should be. Like, you know what I mean? Like the old guy that's like hanging out behind the fence, yelling out plays, and you're like, Dad, no, I got this.
That's good, actually. Yeah.
Let's start the show.
Who gets more snaps? Who gets more snaps at tight end this year? Tim Tebow or Larry Fitzgerald?
Neither.
Well, no, they tie at 0. Yeah.
Okay, how about this? Who can name the actual 2 starting?
This is Fantasy Intervention. Intervene with your fantasy life, Shane Manila, Jacob Sanderson, and Chase Vernon.
What is up, everybody, and welcome to another Tuesday edition of Dynasty Intervention. Chase, Can you please stop cutting me off in the middle of my sentences in these pre-shows? Like, I'm going to leave. This will be the last episode of the show.
What was the question?
I was going to ask you guys, by the way, when I say you guys, for those just tuning in, I'm referring to Andrew Hall and Shane Manila and Chase Vern. I was going to ask you, who plays tight end for the Cardinals? There's 2 of them. Can you actually name them?
Well, it's not
Darryl
Dan Arnold, right?
Daniels.
Sorry?
Darryl Daniels or Daniel Darryl.
I think isn't it like, I thought it was like DeVaris Daniels or something weird.
Same difference, that guy.
Daniels.
And Max Williams.
And they still got Max Williams.
I was going to say Max
There you
Williams.
go.
There.
Look at that.
Fun story. So the very first year I started playing Dynasty football, or maybe the second, I forget. I think it might have been the first, but it was definitely my first rookie drafts. I definitely drafted Max Williams at 112 in one of my rookie drafts. And this is before Superflex was big, because, that was like, 5 years ago, 6 years ago. And that did not turn out well. So Max Williams will always hold a special place in my heart.
Well, Shane, first off, I mean, for you to be able to name both of those, people don't realize it because you're so funny, but you actually know a lot about Dynasty football. And I think more people should understand that. But second of all, were you playing in a point per chip block league? Because Max Williams is elite in that format.
Look, you don't remember because you were 7. But Max Williams, when he was coming out, was the next big thing. He was like the proto Kyle Pitts.
No, he
that's
wasn't.
A little extreme. He was more like Zach Ertz light. But
I remember watching him in college because he played for the Minnesota Golden Gophers, and up here in Manitoba, we're like the Minnesota of Canada, right? We have wheat. We start with M. We end with TA. It's all the same difference. Anyway. Another person who roots for a Midwestern team is our guest today, Andrew Hall from Fantasy Pros. Andrew, let us know how you're doing tonight.
I'm doing great. Glad to be here, guys. It should be a fun one. I know Shane's looking to get some people on his network, apparently, so we got to be careful.
Yeah, Shane's been looking like he's been in the LinkedIn streets lately, calling himself great. Add him to your network. I could be one of those people on LinkedIn that's like, recommend fantasy football advice, recommend can shoot a bird off of a neighbor's lawn. Shane, how are you doing today?
I haven't killed any animals today, so I'm good.
Still time.
Look,
Are birds animals?
No. They it's a little known fact. Well, it's a widely known fact that birds are descendants of dinosaurs. Dinosaurs are lizards. Lizards are descendants of Satan. Ergo, not animals. I'm very good at science. No, I'm excited. We got a lot of football news. We got Andrew on. He's all about selling Jonathan Taylor at any cost. So I can't wait to hear it.
Should be fun.
Chase, do you agree with Shane that Sammy Watkins is a descendant of Satan? And how are you doing tonight?
I would not be surprised if he was a descendant of Satan. He causes a lot of issues, obviously, for his teammates and pretty much just cock blocking him from getting the ball on a regular basis and making it more difficult for his teammates to put up fantasy points, especially in week 1 and in the playoffs. So, yes, I can agree with Shane 100%. I like that. But I'm doing well, man. I'm doing well. I'm ready to kick off this episode tonight and get everything started. Been writing articles for the past 2 or 3 days now, so I'm ready. I'm ready to rock and roll.
All right, well, we're going to get right into it tonight because, we've had a tendency to go overtime a little bit lately, so we're going to try and keep it within a 60 to 75-minute range tonight for you. So let's get right into the number 1 news piece of the week since we've last been on. Julio Jones got traded to the Tennessee Titans, and of course, we're going to talk about that.
When did this happen? Hey, what? Are you serious? I haven't heard anything about this.
Yeah, Andrew, you're too busy in the DMs with all these Jonathan Taylor trades. You didn't notice.
Right. Blew up Twitter with the Julio. Yeah, that was nuts.
Yeah, so I think we talked at least a couple episodes ago about a lot of the Falcons side. So let's especially get into the Titans side of this, and then we'll come back to the Falcons. First question, let us know how you're feeling. But first off, the big thing today, of course, former guest of the show, my guy, Christian Williams, is taking the strong stand that Julio Jones is still the clear number 1 in Tennessee. I've seen most people more on the AJ side. Sparked some fun debate today. Who are you going with in 2021? Julio or AJ Brown? Who do you think is the alpha wide receiver for the Tennessee Titans? And we'll put our guest on the spot first here. So, Andrew, how are you feeling about this one?
Well, I'm obviously Julio is a number one receiver. I will say that he is definitely stud worthy, but on that team, AJ Brown is more familiar with Tannehill. He's more familiar with just how that play calling works. Even though they lost Arthur Smith, I don't think that's going to change that much of how the cadence works and all that. I think AJ Brown's going to still warrant that number one coverage. I think with Julio aging too, you're going to hear a lot of people saying, oh, he's aging. He's not as fast as he used to be, which I think is crap. In all honesty, this is a perfect 1A and 1B kind of situation. It doesn't matter who you cover. The other one's going to get open. So I am personally leaning AJ Brown, but man, it's close. Those two are both awesome in my book.
Shane, Chase, let's get in here. We'll start with Shane, and context is not a real thing. Man, once I got Shane hooked up on this, you can just change your name thing. It's created a whole new animal. What do you think here? And do you think they could both potentially even be wide receiver ones for fantasy this year?
Yeah, if there's a quarterback that they can do it with, it would be Ryan Tannehill, because that dude is just super efficient. There's also the non-zero chance that Derrick Henry's not going to play all 17 games. I mean, because most running backs don't do that. And I think he's only missed one game in the last 3 seasons, something like that. Bye, Chase. He's only he's only missed 1 or 2 games in the last 3 seasons. And with that workload, and look, I hate trying to predict injury. At some point, your body breaks down, even though he is a freak of nature. Even if he doesn't, Ryan Tannehill is efficient enough that he can make both guys wide receiver ones. We've already seen it with A.J. Brown. We saw it in his rookie season. We saw it last year. It's not like it was hyper-targeted. Corey Davis had plenty of targets. If he was Julio Jones, if you just supplant Julio Jones into where Corey Davis was, Julio Jones is a wide receiver one.
There's a lot of vacated targets there, Shane.
Well, vacated targets don't exist.
There we go.
Targets aren't actually real. They are part of a parallel universe anyway. But I mean, look, someone brought it up, and I forget who, and I thought it was a stupid point. But there actually are some vacated targets between Corey Davis and Juno Smith. Juno. And
no, Juno is the person who got pregnant in the movie. Jonnu Smith is the underutilized tight end.
I totally see how you can confuse the two. They're both so similar looking.
Juno is also the capital of Alaska.
Do you know?
That's not a place. That is not a place. What's going to be great is Tannehill is going to have 450 pass attempts, and 370 of those are going to be split just between Julio and AJ Brown. Look, both of those guys are the types of receivers that you don't need to hyper target them. You don't, especially if Julio is going to go out there and average 16 yards a catch like he did last year. So yeah. Now, if anyone is selling AJ Brown at even a modicum of a discount based off this, you go buy, you smash their face, and you get that AJ Brown on your team.
I wouldn't smash their face. I would come up and kiss them right on the lips. I'd be so happy that they'd give me an AJ Brown share, even if they look like you. So I agree with you guys. I think AJ Brown's going to be good. I think Julio's going to be good. I was grinding the target shares, on Excel. And of course, Corey Davis, AJ Brown, they combined for almost a 49% target share last year. So, if you do just supplant Corey Davis, you put Julio in there. I mean, Julio is obviously better than Corey Davis. As much as I love Corey Davis, there's no reason why you can't get up to a 50 to 52% combined target share between those two. I mean, these other people, they don't exist, right? Like Josh Reynolds, he's nothing. Something called a Ferkser. I don't really know what that is. I think it's some sort of appliance.
Ferkser, I barely know.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm not too concerned about the limited volume there. I think both will be efficient. Both are going to get a bunch. Now, moving forward, you mentioned you'd still have A.J. Brown quite highly. I have A.J. Brown, Dynasty wide receiver 1. Anybody not have him as the wide receiver 1, or at least not in that top tier of wide receivers? I mean, if you prefer a Metcalf or a Jefferson, or maybe you're more into Tyreek Hill or whatever, I'm not going to fault you for that. But is he still at least in that clear top 5?
So it's not Michael Thomas, because it was Michael Thomas this time last year.
Not Michael Thomas. If it is Michael Thomas, then I would say trade back.
Wow, man, in that top tier, I don't think there's any question.
Yeah, he's definitely in that top tier. I mean, obviously the tier, I think, in my opinion, that top tier is actually getting bigger, which is rare. I think usually you see like 1 or 2 guys, like you have the Tyreek Hill, the Devonta Adams, but I feel like there could be 8 guys that could be number 1 overall right now. I could hear an argument for somebody and I go, yeah, you know what? That makes sense. Let me switch it. So I feel like it's bigger than ever right now, but AJ Brown is definitely in that tier. Yeah.
All right. That sounds good to me. Now, obviously, Ryan Tannehill, I mean, I don't think this requires a whole lot of analysis. Obviously very good for Ryan Tannehill. He just got Julio Jones. It would seem good for Derrick Henry. He's probably going to get even more touchdowns. Maybe lose a little bit of carries. I don't know. Anyone with strong feelings on either of those guys, or we can head over to the Falcons?
Well, I'll just jump in and say that Derrick Henry is going to see a lot fewer opponents in his path to run over.
That's
and
true.
I mean, I think it's going to be
It's
something
unfortunate for gifts.
Yeah, well, at the same time, to hit on what Shane was saying, I mean, it's a 17-game season, but if Derrick Henry is able to get free in the middle and run, he may not take as much abuse. Maybe he makes it the whole time, right? I mean, there's a whole bunch of what-ifs that spin off from this, but I'm not worried about Derrick Henry at all. I'm with you. I think the scoring opportunities go up. The boxes get lighter. I don't see them leaning on him any less. Yeah, go for it.
He might average 7 yards a carry this year.
Yeah.
It's going to look like college football. Oh, okay.
This is an angle. Are you like podcasting from the parking lot? What's going on? Are you at the drive-in movie?
So this is the window behind me. I just lost power. Yeah, so
Okay.
This looks
Whole neighborhood
really
lost power.
sketchy.
this is just me in my room, sitting in a very dark room all by myself. Well, Bentley's here, so.
All right, cheers to that.
All right. Well,
Oh, I should probably cheers that.
I'll ask the creepy bearded guy in the dark room for your thoughts. We've been talking about how the Julio Jones trade affects the Titans. Do you have any hot takes here? We've been pretty boring. I think we all kind of agree.
I mean, essentially, it should free up opportunities for AJ Brown. I'm not really concerned with his target share whatsoever. I think he's still in the green for sure. A lot of people are moving him down in their rankings. I don't really think it affects it that much.
All right. Well, then let's talk about the Titans quick. And Andrew, we'll especially get your take because I think the three of us have all talked about the Falcons a little bit in the last couple episodes once we knew Julio was getting traded. Who do you think is the biggest beneficiary on the Falcons, and just how high would you spring them up? Obviously Ridley, Pitts, big ones. And is there anyone, I call them the witness protection program nameless, between, Christian Blake, Frank Darby, Russell Gage, Olamide Zaccheaus. Any of those guys jump out to you, and specifically how like elite do you think we're looking at for Ridley and for Pitts?
Well, I think the one name you didn't mention, which I actually think is the one that benefits the most, is Hayden Hurst. In all honesty, I think the way this really is going to work is you're going to have Ridley on the outside, you're going to have two tight end sets, and you might even have Pitts running out wide and kind of being a distraction. Rookie tight ends take a while to adapt to the game and kind of get used to the play calling and the speed and all this. If it were me, and I know I'm not a coach, but if it were me, I'd line Pitts up outside to draw coverage
100%.
because everybody's going to be looking to go, this new rookie guy is going to be – and then Hurst is underneath for 10 to 12 yards every single play. Right. I mean, they're not going to lean on the running game with Mike Davis. I mean, they could, but he's not going to last. And who do they have behind him? Todd Gurley sitting at home on the couch eating chips, right? So like that's not going to work. And I just don't know about Russell Gage, Olamide Zaccheaus, Frank Darby, like all these guys. Any one of them could be, but at this point, I don't have a strong, urgency about picking up any of them. I mean, I took some shots in best ball and later round picks just to see why not. Let's see if it strikes gold. But I'm not going out and trying to get Gage or anything like that in Dynasty. I just don't know yet. I think there's too many question marks. But yeah, I think for me, it's Hurst that it is the one that sees the boost that not a lot of people are looking at.
I couldn't agree more on Hurst. I when we talked about this 2 weeks ago with Josh Larkey, I was saying you need to draft Hayden Hurst in the 18th round of every best ball draft. Everybody laughed at me. That's fine. People laugh at me all the time. I'm from Canada. Chase, what do you think on these Falcons guys?
I think that Andrew's secretly saying that Javion Hawkins is going to be the rookie running back one. Because he's going to get opportunity because they're going to run Mike Davis till he doesn't, he can't walk anymore.
Javion Hawkins is a UDFA who's a foot shorter than me, and he's still lighter. And I'm the lankiest person, north of the 49th parallel. I don't care about Javion Hawkins.
Are you joking? Well, you are sitting there supporting Tutu Atwell, and yet you do not want to get behind.
Supporting
Javion
is
Hawkins.
very harsh wording. Yeah, but
Different
also
positions.
Tutu Atwell got drafted in the second round. Javion Hawkins has yet to be drafted. There's a better chance that Javion Hawkins will be drafted into a war than that he'll be drafted into the NFL.
Well, yeah, it's already happened.
I know.
Now. He's
That's what I'm saying. If he's ever going to be drafted, it's going to be to go fight in Southeast Asia.
Oh,
Why is it got to be Southeast Asia? I got to be racist like that.
Oh, okay, all right.
I just foresee continuing tensions between China and the U.S.
Oh, God.
It's not
Javion Hawkins will be
Let's not
drafted
get
into the
political.
trade war.
Southeast Asia is like the Philippines, Cambodia, Vietnam.
Well,
We have a
they've done
history
war in
there.
Cambodia before, and they've
We've
drafted
had a
people.
history there. It's not great. Not great, Bob.
I don't think we're going back. No. Let me get this back on track for a second. I will say that Hawkins is a perfect James Robinson-esque type of player. And I think there are a lot of dynasty managers that missed out on Robinson last year that are looking at players like Hawkins and are going, that's my guy, I'm going in. And they're just kind of hoping that he hits. But James Robinson, the Phillip Lindsays of the world, they don't hit that often. So, I mean, I'm not necessarily hating on Hawkins. I think if you get him in your 4th round of your rookie draft or off waivers, sure, go for it. But he is a little small. He didn't get drafted for a reason. I don't know. I don't know. It's not the same situation that we saw with James Robinson. They've got plenty of offensive firepower. I'm just not 100% sold that he's the guy.
No.
I do think he can play a little bit.
I'm going to
He's
say
a
the
pure
parallels
satellite
there to James Robinson and Phillip Lindsay, who are two completely different types of players who don't even match stylistically, in the sense that he's also undrafted free agent and he's a running back. So
That's clearly similarities. Yeah.
Yeah. No, you know what? I actually do like Javian Hawkins a little bit because I don't think Mike Davis is good at football, and Atlanta's coaching staff is
But he has a
showing
good
that.
juke rate, Shane.
Oh God, here we go.
Argue that.
I'm in a league right now. I'm in a league, and it just went down. Like literally, went down about an hour ago. Somebody gave up a 2020 second first and a 2020 and a 2023 second for Mike Davis.
Wait, did you say a 2020 second first?
And
2022.
a 2023.
No, but what is a 2020 second
Second.
first?
2022 first.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Sorry, yes. A 2022 first and a 2023 second. And I'm
Mike
like
Davis?
for Mike Davis, and
That
I wanted
person
to
needs to be
throw my
arrested.
phone.
That person needs to be arrested.
Oh man.
Yeah,
I would
dude,
gladly
like,
sell Davis for that. Yeah. Give me
Why are
the
you so
picks all
bad?
day. Yeah.
You should not be playing fantasy football if you make trades like that. I'm
You should
sorry.
see
I
his-
don't,
No,
I
they
don't know who
definitely should.
you
They
are.
should just be in my league. That sounds great. I love players like that.
No,
against
no,
me.
I don't want players like that in my leagues either.
I hate
then
players
it becomes,
like that.
Then
Look.
it becomes race to that guy
Yeah.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Look,
or girl.
Jacob's
I don't want to be
frozen.
sexist. Girls can also make bad trades.
Jacob's frozen. Yeah, lots of girls make bad trades. Men make bad trades. Everyone makes bad trades. I don't like people that make bad trades in my leagues. But yes, when they do, I immediately go, oh, okay, so I need to follow up with a trade offer to them. Okay. Anyway,
Well, but it
back
could just
to
be
the
somebody who
Falcons.
likes Mac. It just could be somebody that likes Mike Davis, right? There are people
It's
out
his
there
mom.
that
They shouldn't.
it may be, but I'm just saying, like, maybe there are people out there that try to get hot takey this time of year. They put their flag on a guy, and it's very likely that he, just thinks Mike Davis is the next guy. I don't know.
So the
They're
best
not
part
always
was
bad.
we obviously we berated him in the chat, right? Like we berated
Yeah.
the hell out of Mike. Oh my God, did this just happen? Blah blah blah. The thing was he had to drop a player, so he dropped Rashad Higgins, and his defense to us berating him about Mike Davis was he watched Rashad Higgins in college and he's not that good. I don't know why everybody's upset that I dropped Rashad Higgins, not the fact that he overpaid for Mike Davis.
Okay, yeah, this guy's. That's,
That's definitely the best part of the story. I agree.
wow.
I swear
Wow.
to
He's
God.
also wrong. Rashard Higgins led the entire NFL in yards per target last year. He's a
Anyway, Jacob, how did we not bring up the fact that Russell Gage is probably going to see at least
Right.
115 targets in this offense? And I'm mad at people on Twitter that are very bad at math. And like 70% of the people that voted on my poll indicated
80.
that Russell Gage, 80% of the people indicated that Russell Gage will not break 115 targets when he broke 102 last year in 16 games. Russell Gage is a thing. It's going to happen. You better buy up those 8 to 10 fantasy points a week and lose by, a little bit less than you normally would by.
No, Russell Gage is like a fever. His target projection is a fever, right? So it's like if you have a fever of 103, you're like, oh, that's pretty notable. But you can't get a fever of 115. You just die first.
Right.
And that's Russell Gage. He can't get to 115 targets. I'm sorry. He might get to 107. He might get to 108, but then he'll just disintegrate into thin air because he'll die of a fever. He won't make it to 115 targets. That's my analysis, at least. That's what my Excel sheet tells me. I don't know if anyone disagrees with that.
I agree, and I think too that I'd rather miss out and pay the higher price for Gage if I'm wrong. To be honest, like I just don't know if it's going to be one. I mean, I don't know who it's going to be. Cordero Patterson's on that team too, isn't he? Like I think
Well,
Patterson
yeah.
was signed by them, and he's a
He's
weird
the real backup running
right.
back.
Well, true, but even then, like they could line him up out wide with Davis. Like there's so many ways this offense could look, and I just think it all filters through Ridley, and then Pitts is a distraction, and Hurst is getting a lot of targets. That's where I think it happens, but it's all speculation. None of us have a clue until we see it on the field.
Chase, are you with Andrew and I, or are you with the Russell Gage fanboy in the corner?
I kind of like Russell Gage in this situation. I don't hate it. I'm literally trying to soak up as much light left from the sun as possible right now by squeezing up against my window. I will very shortly be out of light. So if I have to hop off, guys, I'd rather not do the show in the dark. But I will say that sitting there and looking at Russell Gage, I think that like he's almost like similar to like an Anthony Miller, where it's kind of like his last shot to do something this year. If he doesn't perform, then you have nothing left over. If he does perform, then you end up having, possibly wide receiver 3 moving forward. So me personally, I'd rather take a shot on like a Russell Gage or an Anthony Miller because their cost isn't that high and keep them on the back end of my roster just in case they do end up seeing those targets and, are startable from week to week.
I've missed out on Gage, and I feel bad about myself because Shane's probably right, even though I hate it. I said back to Shane's tweet at the time, I said, if Russell Gage gets 115 targets, I'll vomit. And he said, well, it's going to happen. And I said, well, I didn't say it didn't. I just, if I say that if I take 20 shots of Bacardi, I'll vomit, that's just true. Like, these things happen. It doesn't mean that they should, but they might. Tom says, what about the Greek god of bad targets? That's our nickname for Olamide Zaccheaus. Olamide Zaccheaus is on 14 of my dynasty teams, and I think about 9 of those was in the last 8 days, and he's probably bad, and I imagine that I'll be clicking the drop button 14 separate times in like 12 weeks. I don't know. He produced a lot in college at the University of Virginia, so that interests me. He's also tiny. I don't know.
It could be
and not
anybody.
that fast.
Yeah,
I think he's probably not that good.
We'll see. Shane could be right. Shane could. I'm not saying you're wrong, Shane.
I need you to understand. I don't think Russell Gage is going to be like a fucking thing. I mean, he's going to get
115 targets is a thing. Like that's going to be a thing.
Yeah, he'll get 115 targets, but he's going to get you 8 to 11 fantasy points a week, and all he's going to do is help you lose by a lesser amount. Instead of losing by 15, you'll be like, "Wow, I lost by 12 this week." So I was right there, Bob, right there.
Yeah. You know what he's great for? Those formats where you got to compete against the league median. Russell Gage will beat the league median for you.
Put you over the edge.
Yeah, probably.
All right, let's move it along here. Shout out Taylor in the chat, by the way. Now you're Taylor. You just became our second favorite Bengals fan guest. So sorry, you've been displaced.
Taylor's good though. I like Taylor. I got to be honest. He's my boy.
We'll have to get both of you on a show at the same time one day. Let's talk about this. So Andrew recently wrote an article on some target squeezes. Chase, you're like reenacting the Buffalo Bill chase scene from Silence of the Lambs right now, and it's like I expect that you're gonna put on night vision goggles and start singing "Goodbye Horses" at any minute.
I've got the spotlight on me. Let's do it.
Can we kick him out of here because he's going to murder someone? Clearly, right?
He'll be leaving soon to murder somebody. It'll be fine.
Like, there's no way this doesn't. Yeah, this doesn't end. There's no way this doesn't end with Chase dissecting someone like live on our stream tonight.
Put the lotion on its skin, or else it gets the hose again. Anyway, Andrew recently wrote an article on target squeezes as the players that might get a lower target share the next year. So let's talk about a few of those, and feel free if you're in the chat, shout out your predictions for someone that you think is going to be taking a target hit this year, or anyone that you're just curious on our thoughts on, really, or any questions, honestly. Andrew, we'll kick it to you first because there's one guy that I spend most of my time debating on Twitter. Brandon Ayuk. You have Brandon Ayuk as someone who's going to be losing some targets last year. Lay out your case from the article and anything that you feel, and then I'll certainly give my take after that, and we'll get Buffalo Bill and Shane in after that.
Sure. So I think the easiest way to put this is this list is not me predicting the future and saying they're going to lose targets. These are just players that had a ton of targets last year that could go down, and it's like we should expect it maybe to come back toward the mean and kind of average out. Goodbye Horses got me. But I think Brandon Ayuk, I put it even like he's one of the obvious choices. I think a lot of people expect him to take a downturn in targets, but then there is, I think, Jacob, you're one of these. There is this group of people out there that think that wasn't a fluke. That was him breaking out, and those are his targets now. And I'm not necessarily against that, but I just can't see the narrative. I can't build the picture where all three, him, Samuel, and Kittle, are all healthy on a run-first offense with a rookie quarterback who's not looking to make a lot of risks. I just can't see them force-feeding Ayuk over anyone else on that offense. So for me, he was one of those players that I looked at the targets. I'm like, he only played 12 games, but he still got 17% of all the targets for the year. And I know you've got other stats that break it out and make an even more compelling case, but I just don't know. I don't know. I'd rather think that he's going to go down than go up. I just don't see how he goes up from where he is.
Well, okay. So, I mean, you mentioned an
If
interesting
they
thing
stay
there,
healthy.
too.
Let me say, if they stay healthy. Yeah.
You mentioned an interesting thing, because I think that like in my opinion, really the actual target number, is probably more important than the down or the up. So if you set the bar at 23, so just for folks that don't know, he went through it. So he got 17% of the 49ers total targets last year when you look overall. But of course, Ayuk only played 12 games.
Yep.
He had the hamstring injury at the beginning of the year, and then he sprained an ankle at the very end, and then there was 2 games with COVID. So 17% total. But if you look at the games that he played, he was 23.2%. And so I think it's much more reasonable to see him coming down from 23%. Here's the entire list since 2009 of rookie wide receivers that have gotten a 23% target share in the games that they played in their rookie year. Odell Beckham, Kelvin Benjamin, Mike Williams, the Tampa Bay Mike Williams, Justin Jefferson, Mike Evans, AJ Green, Brandon Ayuk, Allen Robinson, Justin Blackmon, Sammy Watkins. So basically that list is pretty much 3 categories. You pretty much, well, technically 4. You have a bunch of superstars. Then you have people that did bad things off the field and got themselves removed from the league preemptively. And then you have guys that got injured a lot. And then you have Kelvin Benjamin. So pretty much Kelvin Benjamin's like the only guy on that list that didn't either succeed or, fail due to unforeseen reasons. So I do think that if Brandon Ayuk develops a drug problem, that he will probably not succeed in fantasy. But otherwise, I can't help but feel exceedingly confident about Ayuk. He was a guy where I don't expect him to continue the trajectory that he was on, at the absolute peak of his powers last year, where he was at 27% in targets. But if you just average it out, I think that around 22, 23% is reasonable. And I think certainly over 17% is reasonable, because he was at 15% in just the first few weeks when everybody was active. And those were like the first, 4 games of his NFL career. So I do think that we could see some progression. Shane, I can see you're raring to go. So I'll stop blabbering and get you in here.
Oh, what I was going to say is...
Sorry, you were muted, and then I unmuted you as you unmuted you, so I double muted you.
So I would say Kelvin Benjamin's eating disorder was not foreseeable. There is no way that you could have seen that coming. So to me, that's no different than, kicking a little kid or whatever happened to the other wide receivers. It's easy to not, I don't want to say it's easy. That's not the word I want to use, but it's easy to point to Ayuk and go, well, George Kittle and Debo are going to be healthy this year, and Jalen Hurts might actually play football this year. Forget Jalen Hurts. Anyway, Debo Samuel and George Kittle will be healthy. But I think Ayuk is enough of a different type of receiver than obviously Kittle, and especially Debo, that he can still see a high market share there if that offense is working the way they want it to. They've ran the ball a lot because I think they've had to, because Jimmy Garoppolo sets up your offense in a way that you need to have a game managed offense. Whereas, Trey Lance, based off his 1 year of college experience and 1 football game, so 13 games of college experience, I think is far better than Jimmy Garoppolo. And I wouldn't be surprised to see them taking a lot more deep shots with Ayuk. So even if his target share kind of flatlines, I think we might see some more big plays from him that would make up for any loss in target share.
Well, and that's actually a great point. I don't want to make it sound like his targets are going down, so I don't want him. I think that if anything, Kittle and Debo coming back help him fantasy wise. I think Ayuk is actually going to be great for fantasy this year because it takes the pressure off, right? He doesn't need to see the same level of targets to do the same production. He's going to be opened up now. They're going to have people in the middle covering Samuel as he running across the middle, and Kittle in the middle. And Ayuk's going to get long bombs. I think he could do actually more with fewer targets. He could be more efficient on that offense. So these aren't necessarily players that I think are going to do worse. They're just like target share could go down. That's all this was. And I think exactly the way you put it too, Jacob, is that, and even Shane said this, like he's not Deebo Samuel. They are not cookie cutter. They are not the same. Deebo Samuel is what everybody talks about. His ADOT is like 2 yards, right? Like he's a running back. Pretty much. So he's just one of those short guys. I don't think Ayuk's that guy, but if you put everybody back on the field and healthy, instead of him getting 10 short targets, he gets 7 long targets. I'd rather have 7 long targets. right? I'm fine with his target share going down. If he's getting 12% share, but he gets 1,000 yards, who the hell cares if he got 12%? You know what I mean? Like, I think that's very possible for him on this offense. So I don't want to make it sound like I'm down on Ayuk. I just think the way if everybody stays healthy, if everything comes back, it's expected that his target share could go down. That's all.
So
Absolutely.
real
Chase, let's
quick,
get
I
you in
will
here
have
too.
to run.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, I will have to run because this is getting really creepy. I looked outside because I'm literally up against the window right now, and there's like 4 of my neighbors sitting up, looking horrified, pointing up into the window at me.
Yeah, they should
I
be
lost
calling the
it.
authorities.
I literally
That's
just
great.
lost my mind. I laughed so hard a second ago because they're all just pointing up and they just see me
They're like, "What are
looking
you
out
doing?"
the window. They have no idea my phone is here. They just see me pointing up or looking out the window like a fucking creep. So I'm going to have to get out of here, but I will say real quick that Brandon Ayuk, while George Kittle were healthy and Deebo Samuel, he only saw a 13.6% target share. And so obviously, with him coming back, I don't know that he gets scripted enough. They might end up running the ball a ton. I don't know how much volume is going to be there. Now, he was overly efficient last year, but I mean, it was ridiculous plays he was making, like hurdling guys and everything like that. Typically, those aren't sustainable, just about as sustainable as Juke Radar. So sitting there and looking at it moving forward, I mean, Brandon Ayuk, he's been slowly rising up my boards, but to sit there and see him finish up the same way that he finished up last year, I think there's just unreasonable expectations. So like we talked about with Jalen Hurd coming back, possibly, we don't even know if he's going to play. We don't know if Deebo Samuel is going to be healthy. We don't know if George Kittle is going to be healthy. So sitting there and looking at it, or Brandon Ayuk in that sense.
Raheem Mostert, right? I mean, there's always.
They already have 3 guys on IR this year. I mean, they had Tavarius, what's his name, the safety that ended up on IR from a torn ACL. They had torn Achilles, I believe. They have their guard who ended up with a torn ACL, and then the meniscus with Mostert. They're already starting out like Washington football has been for the past 10 years now.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Wilson,
I'm sorry, not Mostert. Yes,
but Mostert's been injured, is what I'm saying. Like, he could get injured again.
Yeah.
He's not young.
All of them could.
It's a matter of time.
It just depends. I mean, obviously Shanahan and John Lynch have to do a better job at drafting players who are a little bit more reliable, long term, or do better with their training staff and get them more conditioned.
Well, they did. So, they just drafted Trey Sermon, so they're fine.
There you go.
It's good.
Problem solved.
With that being said, enjoy the rest of your night, guys. I'll talk to y'all soon.
Goodbye, horses.
See you, Chase.
So it's weird because apparently whoever Chase has trapped in his basement pulled out the electrical wiring and took out the electric in the whole neighborhood. So good for them, and I hope they make it.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I'll just say this: like, if Chase isn't on the show next week, he's probably on the CD Lamb. So that's a concern for sure. We'll keep you posted on Chase as he continues to hide people in a pit. So let's move along here. Another guy you were talking about is Darren Waller. Now this is interesting. Of course, last year a lot of people were betting against Waller in the offseason, and I don't know if I was betting against him, but I certainly was not betting on him either, and I was a big dumb face. So this year, everybody's in. Everybody's buying in at his ADP. He's going now, actually, literally just today, he finally got above Kittle in redraft formats, and he's, right about even there. What do you see with Darren Waller and why his target share might be coming down? And then let's talk about this Waller versus Kittle debate, especially from a dynasty perspective, but even in 2021 as well.
Sure. So again, for me, it just comes down to, where the team went last year. And I think we all had higher expectations for Ruggs than what he delivered. I would say that a lot of people had higher expectations for Edwards than what he delivered. They added John Brown. They added Kenyon Drake. Josh Jacobs has not been the pass catcher that team wants. I think that even those minute changes show me that the team wants to spread the ball around more. They have obviously got receivers that could do it or should step up on their second year. And just the amount of targets Waller got is, I don't want to say it's unsustainable because it definitely is for a player of his caliber. I just look at it like it's more likely to regress to the mean than it is to go up. In the article I put it here, he has 145 targets for the year through 16 full games. Like, he played a full season. And I rode him to the championship in HQ3 with Shane, right? Like, I literally was like, well, I'm just putting all my horses, just all those goodbye horses, put them on Darren Waller's back, right? Like, he just crushed it last year. And I'm not 100% sold that repeats. I think it's more than likely that goes down, even if it goes down from 145 to 135, right? Even if it goes down a little bit. I just don't see it going up. And I think even John Brown's going to warrant enough targets to make it confusing. And Derek Carr, I don't like putting all my eggs in the Derek Carr basket. I mean, that's burned me before. I had him in one Superflex league last year, and Derek Carr just blew my team apart with a 0. You know what I mean? Like I lost by 25 points or something. Like
that's because he popped his tank one week. You can't blame him for that.
It wasn't even that week. There was I think it was 2 years ago then maybe, but either way.
Yeah, actually.
There was like a pretty much a goose egg with the way that went in that scoring. And so the point I'm getting at is I just don't trust that offense to be anything like it was last year. Their offensive line got significantly worse. If you recall, they got rid of everybody. You could say the argument, the narrative could say that maybe that helps Waller because now he's going to have to get rid of the ball faster and Waller's a close target. But I just think that if you're letting defenders in your offensive zone, you're not going to have as many scoring chances. So I just again, I think that was maybe his peak for targets. Now to kind of cut to the dynasty talk and do I like him over Kittle? I kind of do. I mean, I think Waller is the kind of guy that I think even if he gets fewer targets, like Ayuk, even with fewer targets, he can produce. He's a beast. He's obviously broken out. He's older, but he's not old. Right. So he's through that rush of the young age, who knows what they're doing. So I just think Waller is a great target. And I think having him as the second tight end after Kelsey, I totally get it. I'm not going to argue too much on that in dynasty or in redraft, really. And he's someone that if I can get him in the 3rd round in redraft, I'm happy. That's a great value in that round if I can get him there. So yeah, let him fall. But this was not meant to say that. It was meant to say more of, I just don't see his targets going up. That's all.
Shane, what's your take on Waller's outlook this year? And would you take Waller or Kittle in Dynasty and in Redraft?
I'll take Kittle because I think Kittle's a cut above. I mean, if Kittle could stay on the field for like 2 more games a year, I'd have him above. I already have him above Kelsey. Never mind. He's my tight end 1, so whatever. Waller, he's a guy last year, and I even wrote an article explaining why Waller was an immediate sell. I cited the fact that they have Josh Jacobs. They're going to throw him the ball more this year. They brought in Lynn Bowden Jr. They're going to throw him the ball.
I totally forgot that he was on the team.
Yeah, and then they drafted
Henry Ruggs. Going to throw him the ball. Brian Edwards, dude's an alpha in the making, right? Problem is Brian Edwards his career's done. Based on the history of fantasy football and real
but that
football.
only applies to the players I don't like, Shane.
No, but based on historical context.
But when I like a player, I ignore that context.
But there's also this. Derek Carr loves his tight ends. Do you want to know the worst tight end finish that he's produced in the last 4 years?
It would probably be I don't know, tight end 6 from Jared Cook or something like that.
A little worse. Tight end 10, Jared Cook.
Okay.
But since then, it's tight end 10, tight end 6, tight end 2, tight end 2. Darren Waller, I don't know if he's going to see a 27% share, but I'd be absolutely gobstruck if it fell below 25%.
Yeah.
John Brown doesn't worry me because John Brown is going to play the role that Nelson Aguilar played last year.
Nelson Aguilar
played that role very well.
I just think Brown's better than Aguilar, right? So that's an upgrade. You're going to get.
I think Aguilar's good, actually.
I mean,
he got lucky. I'm not an Aguilar fan, but
it's debatable. I mean, John Brown. Look, I love John Brown early in his career. He's hurt me a little bit since then, but look, and I've already given up on Brian Edwards, as I've stated. Sure, Henry Ruggs could eat into that target, I guess, but look, I'm not betting against Darren Waller 2 years in a row and continuing. Like Derek Carr has shown that he loves his quarterback. He will throw to his quarterback no matter what, because he's a safe option. And Darren Waller is just, And Darren Waller is
that's Marcus Mariota, actually, their backup that throws to his quarterback.
He's throwing to his quarterback.
He does that in the playoffs.
When he pitches it, and then
but himself, right?
Yeah. And Darren Waller's he's actually a pretty exceptional wide receiver. You know what I mean? Like it's not Jason Witten. I get targets, I fall down, I dad run. He's a dynamic option in the offense, and they're just going to keep feeding him because it works.
Well, who is real quick before we move on? I'm curious if Shane can get this. So Waller was the first in targets. Aguilar was second. Who would be your guess for third in targets on the team last year? Total for the season.
Oh my gosh!
Curious if you can think of who it might be. It wasn't Edwards. I'll give you that hint.
No, I know it wasn't
Jacobs,
Edwards.
Right? There's no way it was those guys.
Who
was it? Ruggs?
Was it Ruggs?
Ruggs is fifth behind Jacobs in targets.
I'm thinking, was it Foster Moreau?
No, it was Renfro, but I always get those two.
Oh,
confused.
Renfro.
But yeah,
Right.
Hunter Renfro.
He exists, yeah.
But that's what I mean. Like they're relying on Hunter Renfro and Nelson Aguilar as their receivers. Like that can't sustain. That's not going to happen. Like those targets plus some, I think, because the players are better. You know what I mean? Like targets go toward the talent, I think is what we were kind of saying before, right? Targets aren't vacated. They go with the player, right? So I'm looking at it like Hunter Renfro is not going to be third in targets, I don't think, barring some crazy injuries. And I don't know, I guess
He might be.
Gruden's the coach, so who the hell knows at this point, right? Like Renfro could be the number one target getter. But I'm just saying, like logically, my brain can't fathom the fact that it was Waller, Aguilar, and then Renfro, and then Jacobs, and then Ruggs on targets.
Right.
We're not talking catches or points. These are just targets. This is opportunities. That blows my mind, and I don't see that happening again. I think Ruggs is up. I think Jacobs, but Renfro and Aguilar, I'm not sure they stay there. And I guess I see your point, though, Shane. In theory, who else on that team is going to catch passes? If they're only throwing to tight ends, it's going to be Darren Waller, right? Sure.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know about 27%, but in my opinion, I think we all like in the bigger picture. I think we all agree in the sense that we think Waller's going to be really good, right? I'm with you, Andrew. I would take Waller over Kittle. To me, it's just kind of the math of it. Like we just talked about Brandon Ayuk. We think he's really good. One of the reasons we're a little bit concerned about Brandon Ayuk is because we also think Debo is really good. If I'm picking a tight end, right? I mean, the thing is, Darren Waller commanded 27.5% of targets last year, and it was a weird team, but that's still not a fluke. Like you have to be a legitimately elite talent at any position to go out and command 27+% of targets. So I don't think we can have any doubts about his talent anymore. And Kittle, even if I think in a vacuum that he is a better player, I don't know how much better player he is than Waller. Certainly a much better blocker. I don't know, how much of a better receiver he is. Probably a little bit. But to me, it's like choose your fighter. Would I rather compete with targets against, Henry Ruggs, who's probably a bust, Brian Edwards, who's probably a bust, John Brown, who's really old and gets hurt a lot, and Hunter Renfro, who's an accountant, right? Or would I rather compete against Debo and Ayuk, who are two young, dynamic wide receivers? It's just hard for me to make the math work on Kittle, even though I think he's a phenomenal player. And I would take Waller actually over Kittle in both formats. Now, let's quickly talk Bengals because you're a Bengals fan. You also included Tyler Boyd on this list, and let's move away just from the Boyd's frame of things. But how do you foresee the targets and the fantasy points going here between, of course, Boyd and Chase and then Higgins? Who do you think just straight up is going to be the wide receiver that you want week to week? And, in terms of their value right now, who do you think is the one worth targeting or any or all of them? And let's start with Andrew. Let's start from the boots on the ground down there.
Well, I mean, I think it kind of depends on how you want to run your fantasy team. And there is no right way to run your team. I hate when people say this is how you should do it. No, you can do whatever you want to do. I personally would probably pick the cheapest of the three because I think they're all going to get 100 targets in my mind. The way that it's shaping up is AJ Green left and Chase is going to get most of, not all of those targets, in my opinion, just because of the way they play offense. And so if all three of them end up with 100 targets, and in a PPR league, targets tend to lead to more catches, which would be more points. And I think the way that Burrow throws the ball, he's going to have a connection with Chase. But if you're going to give me an option, which one do you want at cost? It's Boyd all day. I just think Boyd's probably the one that suffers the most, if that's such a thing. I think the way that the offense is going to be driven is through Chase instead of through Boyd because Green wasn't doing it last year. We already called him a washed up aging veteran and nobody wants that kind of guy on their team, right? And that's why he left town. Most Bengals fans are AJ Green fans, but he wasn't doing it last year. There was no scare there. There was no fear. So I think if you put those targets on Chase and Higgins goes where he's going, those are both fine options. But for me, I still think Boyd's going to get 80 to 100 targets. I just don't see it being the target leader anymore. That's really all this was. Mm-hmm. He was the target leader on the team. And I think a lot of that came down to, yes, Burrow liked him, but when Burrow left, whoever the backup quarterback was Boyd, just like, you take it. And I think that's what's going to change. I think that's where you're going to see the biggest difference. Mm-hmm. You're going to see Burrow try to feed Chase a lot. And I think Boyd's still going to get his underneath. And I think of the way, again, like we were saying with Atlanta, or actually more with Tennessee, I guess, with Julio going to Tennessee, that offense is going to get opened up underneath, right? Now you're going to have to watch the guys. Safeties are going to pull back and cover Higgins and Chase. More money for Boyd. So I think Boyd gets fewer targets, has more efficiency, has more catches, and I think it ends up being a better position. So of the three, although he's getting fewer targets, I would take Boyd, I think, at the cost.
And then straight up, 2021 fantasy points. Chase, Higgins, Boyd, how do you rank those?
If we're talking just 2021, I think, and again, PPR, I'd probably put Boyd at the beginning, but if anybody's, and I still do play in some standard leagues, which are really annoying. So if you're playing in non-PPR.
We don't talk about standard leagues. We don't want to encourage those people.
That's fair. I also don't like calling it standard because it's not standard anymore. So
PPR leagues.
PPR, yeah.
How are you ranking them in PPR?
PPR, I go Boyd, Higgins, Chase, only because
Wow,
I like having, and again, it's back to how you like to play. I like having consistency week to week. I like knowing what I'm getting into. And again, it depends on the rest of my team. And I hate to use that outside, the context that Chase or Shane probably doesn't like actually, but I don't like that Chase could have a huge week and a down week. I don't know what to expect from him. Boyd, I think, on the other hand, could get 9 targets, 7 catches, 65 yards, and a touchdown every week. I'd rather have that as my wide receiver 3 if I have a risky team ahead of him. But if I've gone floor on the previous 2 receivers, then give me Chase. Right. So it kind of depends. But the catch is you're not getting Chase as your 3rd receiver. Right. Like Chase is going to be gone in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th round. And so for me, that's too risky for me at that price. And Boyd is almost too boring at his price. So I'd rather have Boyd and at least have the consistent points. That's kind of where I go.
All right, Shane, let's get you in here. And just for context, in 2021 best ball formats, which I think is probably the best judge of redraft ADP right now. Chase usually going at the 4 or 5 turn, Higgins at about the 5-6 turn, Boyd in the mid 7th, and that's half PPR. Shane, what's your take on this Bengals situation, and how would you rank them in targets here and for value?
So one thing, and I've thought about this not just because Andrew brought it up, but because I'm a big nerd. So I've thought about the fact that AJ Green had 100 targets last year, and I keep trying to convince myself where there's no reason that all 3 guys can't get 100 targets this year. And then I remember AJ Green did absolutely nothing with those 100 targets last year. So those 100 targets, again, and this goes back to the whole vacated thing, they don't just exist in some kind of like pristine case where, okay, well, here's 100 this year, there's 100 that year. No, what's going to happen is those targets are probably going to move to end up being about 60 targets because they're going to be more efficient being thrown to Jamar Chase and the other kid, the one they got last year, T. Higgins, that guy. That said, I still like buying Boyd right now because he's shown at worst he can be a highly effective wide receiver too on an NFL roster and for your fantasy roster. And no one wants to buy him right now.
Right. His
contract's up. He's an out after this season. Usually I don't look too much at that. When it's the Bengals, I look at stuff like that. There's a pretty good chance he's not there after this year.
It really makes no sense. Them there, like if you're just allocating resources on your roster, you're not going to allocate significant resources towards your 3rd most important wide receiver. It doesn't make much sense.
Which is one of the few reasons that Cincinnati might hold on to him, because that's kind of how they operate. They don't make a lot of sense.
I was just going to say, like, trust me, it's boots on the ground. We've seen it.
Yeah.
How long did we hold on to AJ Green, right? Like it happens. We get a guy we like. Hushman Zada stayed on the team a while. I mean, like I could totally see them re-signing Boyd for not a minimum contract, right? Like a serious chunk contract, and everybody just goes, what are you doing? Like that's way overpaying. Like $18 million for 2 years. What are we like that? Okay. Yeah. Like they do that all the time. So sorry, Shane, go ahead.
No, you got the boots on the ground, man. I feel for you. I understand. This year, I mean, look, I don't value consistency. If I did, Tyler Boyd would be my guy because I think every week he'll get me at least 10 points. And there's this week he's probably going to get me 20 points, but will he do much more than that? Probably not.
It's weird that you're not into Tyler Boyd since you like Russell Gage so much.
Here's the thing. I like Tyler Boyd in context. When you add Jamar Chase to the T. Higgins context that already existed, I like him a little bit less. He's not going to have any explosive plays. Like that's just not going to happen. He's going to have some 10 for 70 yard games, Julian Edelman type games where you're like, all right, he got me 17 points on, 70 yards. So I'll take it. But I don't. Consistency isn't something I truly value. I'm always shooting for upside, so I'm going to take Chase because I expect him to at least shatter what Justin Jefferson did last year. If he has less than 1,900 yards, I don't know what I'm going to do with myself. Yeah,
I mean, I look. Wow, I just had a stroke on air. I'm sorry. Once I go and get my burnt toast from upstairs, I'll come back and make this point. No, people know that follow me. I have a saying that's caught on to the point where people now tag me whenever people say good things about Tyler Boyd. I have random followers that actually just tag my account so that I'll have to see good things about Tyler Boyd because I have a hashtag, which is hashtag I don't fuck with Tyler Boyds because I just don't value those types of players. In my opinion, once you get outside that top 8 to 10 to 12 wide receivers that are that hashtag league winners, I just think that those points are generally replaceable. I mean, Shane talked about a guy in Russell Gage, right, who you can get for basically nothing. You can probably get him really in most places for a 3rd round pick and, I don't know, a sack lunch. And you're going to get like 80% of the production of most of the players that you have as a wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 3. So to me, like in my premium positions, I'm just shooting for guys who might be top 5 wide receivers. I think we know that Tyler Boyd won't be a top 5 wide receiver, bless his heart. And then I'd sort of rather buy that. To me, he's like a premium. To me, like Tyler Boyd is going to a steakhouse and ordering a burger. Like, you're still getting a burger. It's like a fancier burger, and the waiter comes out and says, "Would you like that burger medium rare?" So you feel all good about yourself because you're not just going to Culver's. But at the end of the day, like it's still a burger. And if we put you under a polygraph test and we gave you that fancy burger and we gave you the Culver's burger, you wouldn't know the difference because you're a dumbass. So to me, that's what I think. Tyler Boyd is. And when I go to a steakhouse, I order Jamar Chase. So that's my take on this segment and my very elongated metaphor. Let's quickly pivot to pivot. Let's quickly pivot here. Andrew wrote another article here, and we were talking about contenders and trades for contenders, and specifically that was about folks to trade away. I wanted to talk especially about folks to trade for, but Andrew, I know one bold take that you had that drew a lot of conversation, which first off, like fantasy content, it is oversaturated. So whether people, and by people, I include me in this, agree with your take, disagree with your take, are offended by your take, as long as you're not saying something sexist or racist, I mean, that's great, right? You want to get that conversation going. So you talked about the possibility of selling Jonathan Taylor. I know you wanted to clarify that a little bit. So why don't we talk about that quick? And then I'm going to get a running back and a wide receiver from each of you that you would be targeting heavily on a contender roster.
So, yeah, I appreciate that. So I just think that the context got lost, and I know context is key, and sometimes nuance is really hard to do on Twitter. But I just think that the hype about Jonathan Taylor is almost at its peak. I can't see anybody going nuts for him more than they're going nuts for him right now.
Can't be Dynasty RB1. You can only stay the same.
Correct. And I just think that he's in that conversation. And I don't know if we've seen enough. That team is changing. There are some question marks that I don't think people are really addressing because their blinders are on and they just see the next Christian McCaffrey and they think he's the guy. I want that guy. So in the article, the idea was if I'm a contender and I can trade somebody like Taylor for a haul, like to get a great running back and a great receiver and a great tight end, something like that to add depth and help me weather the storm of injuries. In a 17-game season, we're going to see more players sitting out without injury. They're just sitting out or they're taking downs off. I just think depth is going to matter more as the season gets longer, and it will continue to get longer because the NFL wants their money. But I just think that, again, the idea behind it was if you're a contender and you have Taylor, you're most likely thinking, I'm fine. I got Taylor. I'm locked in. The idea was think about an option. If there's a rebuilder that has a couple of these other guys that might want to consolidate as a rebuilder and they've got a bunch of picks and they know they're coming, maybe you could get an absolute haul, like a Kamara, Hawkinson, Boyd for Taylor, right? So that was the example I put in the article because I think if it's something like that, I'd honestly consider it as a contender. I'm like, okay, so I'm dropping from Taylor to Kamara, but that's pretty good. I get Hawkinson. If it's a tight end premium, that's a steal even more. And like we just talked about Boyd, like that's consistency in my flex. At the end of the year, that comes in handy. As much as you want to hate it, those kind of guys can really make or break your season. So I'm just using it as an argument of let's go against the grain a little. Let's think outside the box. Let's start saying maybe we sell Taylor, but at the same time, if you want to buy Taylor on a contending team, I'm not going to argue with you. Like that's obviously the clear-cut answer. So there is no right or wrong. It's more of like, hey, think about this option. So that's really all I was going for with that.
Here's my take on it, which I think that one of the reasons that I thought this was interesting is I wrote a series that was the total opposite earlier in the offseason, right, which was I wrote 12 steps for rebuilders. And my view is with guys like Taylor, that's like the guy that you want to sell actually if you're a rebuilder. And it's not just because he's a running back, because I also included DK Metcalf and AJ Brown as guys you should consider selling. My whole reason on that is it's about value management.
Correct.
And in my opinion, if you're a rebuilder, I mean, right, you did mention the one specific case where maybe a guy has like 5 first-round picks next year, so actually he does have a high-value roster even if he's not competing. But in most cases, people rebuild because they have to, not necessarily because they want to. And so if you have a low-value roster and you happen to have Jonathan Taylor on that roster, as we just said, there's 2 options for Jonathan Taylor's dynasty value at this point, right? It either stays the same or it goes down. He's literally being taken as the RB1 or RB2 in startups, so you can't really go higher than that. If I'm a rebuilder, to me, I need to create surplus value. Jonathan Taylor cannot do that, so I have to break him up into other pieces that hopefully can. Now, obviously, if I'm a rebuilder, Alvin Kamara is probably not my first choice, whereas if I'm a contending roster, he might be. The reason why I wouldn't make that trade if I'm a contender is because I'm already high value. So to me, like my flex positions are quite good. If anything, like adding those depth pieces to me is less important because I'm probably just trying to optimize my roster. And in my opinion, if I can take a guy like a Kamara, who is going to be a really strong asset, and then add a depth piece that I can probably afford to lose more than other teams because I'm that contender with surplus value, convert that into a Taylor where I can get similar production in 2021, but extend my winning window or my contention window. That's more, what I'm trying to do. But I think it's a really interesting value shift because I definitely see a lot of people that feel the same way you do. Shane, what's your take on this one? I think it's an interesting philosophical.
Yeah, and that's what I like about it is that it's all about theory because to me, honestly, that's much more interesting than fucking players, to be quite honest with you. The theory of do you sell players at their peak or do you hold on to them? And it's kind of like Andrew said it earlier. It depends on how you play the game, right? If I'm always looking at value, well, then I'm always selling those players. I'm selling Justin Jefferson off of last year. I'm selling Jonathan Taylor off of last year. Although I guess you don't need to be that binary. Obviously there's some shades of gray, but then it becomes a little more difficult to manage 40 rosters. Anyway, so back to the point on Jonathan Taylor. And I don't really think it matters if you're a contender or a pretender, to be quite honest with you, when it comes to players like Jonathan Taylor either.
The nicer term is rebuilder, Shane.
What did I call them? Pretenders?
I like it though. Yeah.
So here's the thing. Rebuilding to me is a horrible term because the connotation of it is that it's going to take you a few years to turn something around. Like, dude, this isn't a real fucking NFL franchise. It should not take you 4 seasons to rebuild your roster.
It does if you trade a 23 first and a 2020 second first for Mike Davis.
You do things like that. Yeah, you're bad. You're bad at dynasty football. So it's going to take you a little longer. And then you're eventually going to learn. Oh,
sorry, I almost fell off my exercise ball.
Yeah, like, I can't keep doing that. So in year 3, you go, okay, rebuilding should be like a 2-year process. Anywho. Yeah, I mean, look, obviously, if you can get a great deal for him, fine. If I can get Saquon Barkley and something, okay. The one problem I have with that, though, is if you follow it to its logical conclusion, I'm always selling the best player for a player right below him and something else. Well, then I'm selling this player for something right below him and something else. Well, I'm selling this player for someone a tier below him and something else. And before you know it, instead of a collection of monsters, I have just a bunch of wide receiver 3s and RB2s and tight end 2s and quarterback 2s. And I go, what the hell just happened?
And then you have to drop Olamide Zaccheaus.
Exactly. And you're like, oh, Russell Gage is actually starting. I'm starting Russell Gage in a start 9 league. That's not good. So that's why I say I'm simple. I like accruing and getting as many monsters on my team as possible. Because all the other guys I can find. Jonathan Taylor, to me, he's harder to find than 2 Chris Carsons. I'll find Chris Carson's out there. So that's why I usually lean. And again, if you're playing in a 12 to 13, 14 starting lineup, it's different. It's different. Yep. It's a lot different. 11, anything after 11, the math is really different. But I think most people that are listening, it's 10 or 9.
11.
Well, I want to add this too. The context of contending versus pretending, as Shane said, it is different too, right? You might think you're contending, but I look at your roster and I think that's a rebuild, right? So, and honestly, like people look at, and this is where I think it comes down to a lot of how you play the game again, right? I look at a contending team as top half, and I've said this on other things, like get me to the playoffs and I can get lucky and win it all. right? Because if you've got those upside guys, all I got to do is get to 8 and 7 or whatever it's going to be this year, and I get in the playoffs, and maybe something happens, right? Like, I don't need the best team in the league. I think a lot of times people look at contending as I've got the best team in the league. That's not always the case. Yes, you're a contender with the best team in the league, but contending might be you've got the 5th best team, and you just need a couple little things to go your way. I've also seen, and I've had teams where I've got, of my 9 starters, I've got 6 of them that I trust, and the other 3 are like, I'm starting Chase Edmonds as my running back 2. You know what I mean? Like, that's a contending team in that league because of the context of that league and the way the league is built. And I've got great receivers. But in that league, it might make sense to trade my RB1 of Jonathan Taylor and add some depth to beat from 4 to 2. So I think the point of it, too, is there is no one answer. And this is what I love about this game. And I would think everyone on this show has multiple teams. Shane, you've got, 60 at this point? But like, I've got teams in one league. That same team in the other league would be horrible. You know what I mean? Like, the context, the market from league to league is so vastly different. So
what you're really saying is some of your leagues have some dumb league mates that have terrible teams, so that there's only like 4 teams with good rosters, is what you're saying.
Correct. There are studs and duds in some of my leagues, right? And there are some of those players that have they just traded for Mike Davis. And I'm like, oh, wow. You had to drop Rashard Higgins. What were you thinking? But I think that ultimately that context comes back into it. And that's all I was going for. And I didn't want to keep harping on it. But I do think that there is some thought of, think about it. Just put that through your brain. See if there's an option. Don't sell them to sell them, right? None of the players on that list are like people you have to move. No. It's just like, here's an option. Here's something you're not hearing. Everybody's talking about buying. And I generally agree with you. You consolidate for value, right? You add as many studs as you can to that team to keep accruing value. Like, on one league, I've got 4 people that I consider wide receiver, top 10 wide receivers on 4 of them on my team. That's what you want on a contender. You want a bunch of those studs. So Taylor's a stud. Keep him. That's fine.
Shout out quick, my co-host on Fridays of the Full Tilt podcast, Thomas Tipple FF, in the chat says, I traded a 104, a 2022 first, or as Chase would call it, a 2020 second first, and a 22 second for Jonathan Taylor for a quote-unquote contending team. I've seen this team. It's a good team. Was this bad process? Well, or let's just say, would you make this trade? Personally, I'm a big yes, and let's just make it like a really quick, 30 to 40 second answer here, and then let's get a couple more questions and we'll get out of here. Shane, would you be trading 104, 22 first, 2022 second for JT on a contender?
In a vacuum, I'm going to assume this is Superflex.
Yeah, Superflex.
Superflex. No, but that's the price to pay for them if you want them. So I'm not going to fault you for it, to be honest with you. Again, it's about getting monsters on your roster. And that's what you got to do. If you have this is why you get assets. This is why you have multiple assets. So you can make trades like this, because no, it's not good process, but you want to win a title sometimes. So sometimes you got to go a little off process and just get that monster and add them to your roster. So more than okay with it.
Andrew?
I would agree. I think the only way I would look at this as bad process is if you sent this and they accepted. Right. The only thing I like is a good process is if you negotiate and find the right price in your league. I think a lot of times, and Shane hit the word perfectly, in a vacuum, right? Everybody on Twitter is posting polls and saying, which side do you like? And you see, 80% of people like this side, so you lost the trade. No. In my league, that was the best I could get, right? In my league, the market, the people don't trade often, or they really value quarterbacks, or they don't value Jonathan Taylor, whatever it is. So every market is different. If you felt good about it, then it's not bad process. That's the way I'm going to put it.
Yeah, I'm fine with this trade. I mean, first of all, 22 second to me is not a whole lot. Like, I don't really care. 22 second is probably going to be nothing. Maybe it's something, but to me, the odds are that that's not much. 22 first to me, you're paying the insurance. Like, your 104 is probably a stud. Jonathan Taylor is certainly a stud, right? I mean, whether he's Dynasty RB 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever, he's obviously awesome. We know he's awesome. We've seen 104s bust quite a few times. Like 2 years ago, the 104 was N'Keal Harry. Oof. What's up? So you're essentially paying the 22 first, right, as insurance that now your 104 will not bust because your 104 is now Jonathan Taylor. And to me, I'm okay with that. Obviously, the way this turns into a debacle is, Jonathan Taylor tears his ACL. You get some other bad luck. Your contending team becomes not a contending team, and now you've traded 2 lottery picks away. But if this actually is a late first, the hit rate on late first isn't phenomenal anyways, right? So to me, if this does turn out contending, I am okay. And also in the chat, he's saying he wanted 4 firsts at first. So it certainly was some negotiation. Really quick, I'll just make this one player. I was originally going to say a wide receiver and running back, but we're at an hour 10 already. So let's one player. It doesn't have to be like a 1-year rental. It could just be anyone. Who is someone where if you log into Sleeper and you got 20 minutes to go on a trade offer spamming spree, which by the way is not the best way to get a trade done, but let's just say that that's what you're doing. You're sitting on the crapper and you're just going send trade, send trade, send trade. Who's a guy that on all of your contending rosters you want and you just want to have on all of those rosters because you think he can push you over the edge and is a really solid value within the trade market these days? Obviously, with the caveat that every league economy is its own thing. We'll start with Shane this time and then go up to Andrew.
I'll buy the shit out of Miles Sanders because I know I'm getting him cheap and everyone's fading him. And again, just real quick, I'll throw another guy in there because contending and pretending means nothing to me. Travis Etienne. I'm also, and I did spam everyone.
Yep. I love Travis Etienne so much. I just want him on every team. I love him. Andrew,
I think
you can give 2 if you want. Why not?
Well, I'll maybe, but we'll see. But no, I think the one that I'm going after is Chris Carson. I just think that offense for this year is going to be running the ball. I don't think if you're rebuilding, you don't want Carson. The writing is on the wall. He's maybe got 1 year, and then it's Dallas or Penny or some other person. You don't want Carson on your team if you're rebuilding. So I think that's someone I would easily trade. You could probably get him for a Terrace Marshall, somebody like a Rondale Moore, one of those kind of guys, those high upside receivers. It's got a lot of flash right now. I'd almost rather have Carson on a contending than the youthful receiver that might be something in 2 years. So that's someone that I'm looking for. And then, there are so many receivers that you could target. That it just kind of depends on how you play the game. But I think Shane hit the head on Miles Sanders, though. That's a good one, too. And I've actually got Carson and Sanders on a rebuilding team, which is not great because I'm just ugh. And everybody knows it. So I'm getting lowball offers on both. And I'm just you know what? Screw it. I'm holding. We're going to get into the season, trade in week 3. And I think that's something I wanted to bring up here is that even if you're a contending team in June, which is hard to say, it's hard to know you're a contender until week 3, 4, 5 anyway. So don't go just selling stuff. Don't go trading stuff just to trade, right? Hold on to some of those guys, target them later. And I think you might get more value. But that's kind of where I wanted to land on that.
Could not agree more, especially for rebuilders. Miles Sanders and Josh Jacobs, to me, are the worst possible players to sell right now. If you're selling Miles Sanders or Josh Jacobs, I think you're doing your team a disservice at the moment. It's really hard to imagine that we're going to get into the 2021 season and that they aren't at least low-end RB2s, which is what they're being priced and drafted as right now. So to me, if they are low-end RB2s, they're just going to be worth what they're worth now anyways next year. So I would just ride it out. Best case scenario, maybe they flash, maybe have a couple big games. Someone else's. Plus they're running backs. Running backs get hurt all the time. Contenders going to look at their team right now that doesn't think they need a running back. Well, in week 3, Dalvin Cook's going to sprain an AC joint, and then Chase Edmonds, that guy's going to realize, Chase Edmonds actually isn't anything at all. And then I need an RB2. And then Miles Sanders all of a sudden starts to look a lot more attractive. So hold those guys to me if you are rebuilding. For contenders in particular, I love the Carson call, by the way, Andrew. He was especially one of my favorite guys to target before he signed the contract. He's gotten a little bit more expensive these days, but I'm still into Chris Carson at cost for a contender. I'll give one quick, or 2 actually. I'll give Antonio Brown is one that is absolutely mandatory for me. If I haven't sent an offer on Antonio Brown in your league yet, it's coming. I have honestly sent multiple trade offers for Antonio Brown in every single one of my leagues. He's so cheap. He was a mid-wide receiver 2 last year when he was there. He's a guy that to me allows me to move other pieces too, because if I'm hoarding a wide receiver that has a lot of value, say I have Robert Woods on my team and someone offers me a 22 first for Robert Woods, and I love Robert Woods a lot. I'm very affectionate towards him, in an appropriate way. Anyway, and I have Robert Woods. Someone offers me a 22 first. I go, shoot, I don't want to move Robert Woods for 22 first because, I'm a contender and he's my wide receiver 3. If I can get Antonio Brown for, 2/3, then I go, okay, well, he'll just replace Robert Woods in my lineup this year. And then I can take that first for Robert Woods and try to swing big, on a Breece Hall or Spencer Rattler or something like that. The other guy quick is Myles Gaskin. I know it's really goofy because I was trying to sell Myles Gaskin in the offseason. They didn't draft anyone, and his price is basically the same. It seems like no one cares that they didn't draft anyone. He's leaking into the 6th round in redraft, which I think is absolutely bananas. And he's still going really late in Dynasty. to me, if you're going to buy someone super cheap, I would rather buy Myles Gaskin than buy, a James Conner or a Mike Davis or one of these other guys that probably only has 1 year. There's at least a chance that Myles Gaskin, who is a super prolific rusher in college and has looked pretty good when he's been in the NFL, just rocks with the job this year and they give it to him again next year. I think that it's you're getting a rental, but I think it's a rental with a little bit more upside than the market currently has priced in. So I'm actually open to buying Myles Gaskin, which I never, ever, ever thought I would ever say. That's going to do it for us tonight. We kept it right at 75. So there we go. Shout out to Chase, who deserted us earlier. Let's pray for the people of Virginia Beach who lost power. Andrew, where can we find you and what are you up to?
Yeah, sure. So I'm on Twitter at Andrew Hall FF. I'm writing some articles for Fantasy Pros, doing some stuff here and there, at least one a week. And I just like a good debate. Like I say all the entire show, right? There is no right or wrong. There is no facts when it comes to opinions. You know what I mean? Like the thing I don't like is when you tell me you're wrong because my opinion is right. And I'm like, well, okay, back it up with some stats. Like I know you like to do that, Jacob. Give me the numbers. Here's exactly why I think what I think. I'm more likely to agree to that and be like, oh, okay, I see your point. Let me rethink my process, right? And I think that's how we all get better is conversations. So have a conversation, come on Twitter and talk, and let's have a fun time.
Absolutely. Andrew, you're always a really fun presence on Twitter on the Bird app, so make sure to go follow him at Andrew Hall FF, one of the really, really good guys in this industry, and I'm happy that we've gotten connected lately. I'm super happy that you came and joined us on this Tuesday evening, so thanks a ton, Andrew, for coming on. And let's swing it down to the Russell Gage fan club president. Shane, when is the next meeting of the Russell Gage fan club, and where can we find you on Twitter?
Never, because it would be the most boring fucking meeting ever. I just want to disagree with Andrew a little bit. I don't like talking to people. Please don't try to conversate with me.
That's true.
I don't care about your process. But if you write an article about your process, I'll read it. And then, or if you podcast about it, I'll listen to it and yell at you while listening to your podcast. But I'd really rather not talk to you. You can find me at Shane is the Worst, writing for DLF. We should be dropping our version 2 of the draft guide shortly. Dynasty Trades HQ, Manic and Chill sometimes, and every Tuesday on Dynasty Intervention.
Thank you, Shane. I gotta say, I've recently become a weekly listener of Dynasty Trades HQ. I did it for the first time because I just felt like as a nice co-host, I should listen every once in a while. And then I liked it so much that I've just added it to my mandatory listens. It's one of the best podcasts you can listen to out there. It's really fun. Shane, honestly, is much funnier away from me. So while it makes me jealous, you also get a lot of enjoyment out of it. Also, Shane, I remember 75 minutes ago we started this. You were like, I need to network more and be nicer, and then I'll have more opportunities. And then by the end of the show, you're like, don't fucking talk to me.
No, never mind. I love everyone. I think everyone is awesome, and I want to be part of your community.
Part of your world. All right, you can find me at FF_RTDB. I think actually tomorrow, my article that I'm sure will not be controversial at all entitled Ezekiel Elliott and the Fallacy of the Buy Low Running Back will be out on playerprofiler.com, in which I will outline my case for I'm fading Ezekiel Elliott in all formats and about the fallacy of buying low on veteran running backs. It'll be out, I think, tomorrow or the day after that. You can also find me pretty much everywhere this week, busy week. I'm going to be hanging out on Front Yard Fantasy tomorrow night. I'm going to be on the Fantasy Newsroom on Thursday, and you'll find me on Friday, as with every Friday, on the Full Tilt Dynasty podcast with Tom and Billy. And you can always find me on Twitter, FF_RTDB. Thank you, folks, in the chat. Thank you, Shane. Thank you, Andrew. And have a lovely night, everybody. Goodbye, horses.